Hello and welcome to our summary of The Art of War, one of the most famous and influential texts on strategy, tactics, and leadership. Written by the ancient Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu, this book has been studied by leaders and military commanders around the world for centuries. In this video, we will be providing a brief overview of the key concepts and ideas from The Art of War, so you can get a sense of what makes this book so valuable and enduring. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into The Art of War.
Laying plans. In this chapter, Sun Tzu emphasizes the importance of planning and strategy in warfare. A successful leader must be able to anticipate the moves of their opponent and plan accordingly, being flexible and adaptable as the situation changes. One key point that Sun Tzu makes is the importance of understanding the situation you are in. This includes factors like the terrain you are fighting on, the strength and weakness of your own army, and the resources available to you. By thoroughly assessing these elements, you can make informed decisions about how to proceed. For example, if you are fighting on a rocky, mountainous terrain, it might be advantageous to use guerrilla tactics and hit-and-run attacks rather than engaging in a full-on battlefield confrontation. Deception is also a crucial aspect of warfare, and Sun Tzu advises leaders to use it to their advantage. This can include disguising your intentions, creating false appearances, and misleading your opponent about your strengths and weaknesses. For instance, you might pretend to be weaker than you actually are in order to lure your enemy into a false sense of security, and then strike when they least expect it. Waging war. One key consideration is the enemy. It is crucial to understand their strengths and weaknesses, as well as their patterns of behavior. By thoroughly assessing these factors, you can identify their vulnerabilities and exploit them to your advantage. For example, if your enemy has a particular weakness in their defense, you might launch a surprise attack at that point to catch them off guard. Maintaining unity and coordination within your own army is also crucial for success in war. A disorganized and divided army will not be able to effectively carry out its strategy and will be more prone to defeat. It is important to establish a clear chain of command and to ensure that all members of the army understand their role and how it fits into the overall plan. This can help to maximize the efficiency and effectiveness of your military operations. Spies can also play a valuable role in warfare. By gathering information about the enemy, including their plans, strengths, and weaknesses, you can gain a significant advantage in the battlefield by being able to anticipate their moves and counter them effectively. When waging war, it is important to consider the enemy, maintain unity and coordination within your own army, and use spies to gather valuable information. By taking these factors into account, you can increase your chances of success in war. Attack by stratagem. One effective way to gain an advantage over the enemy is to use stratagems to mislead and surprise them. This can involve pretending to retreat in order to lure them into a trap or creating a false sense of security in order to catch them off guard. For example, you might feign weakness in one area in order to draw the enemy's attention and resources there, while secretly building up your strength in another area for a surprise attack. It is also important to adapt your strategy to the specific circumstances of the situation. This might involve adjusting your plan in response to changing conditions or the actions of the enemy. For instance, if the enemy shifts their focus to a different area of the battlefield, you might need to alter your own tactics in order to counter this move. Another key factor to consider is the psychological state of both your own army and the enemy. A confident and motivated army will be more likely to succeed than one that is demoralized or uncertain. By keeping your own army motivated and working to undermine the confidence of the enemy, you can gain a significant advantage in the battlefield. The use of stratagems and deception can be an effective way to mislead and surprise the enemy, and it is important to be flexible and attuned to the psychological state of both your own army and the enemy. By following these principles, you can increase your chances of success in warfare. Tactical dispositions. Sun Tzu advises leaders to carefully consider the specific circumstances of the situation when deciding on their tactical dispositions. This includes factors such as the terrain, the strength and weakness of one's own army, and the resources available. By thoroughly assessing these elements, leaders can choose a tactical disposition that maximizes their chances of success. In addition to considering the specific circumstances, Sun Tzu emphasizes the importance of being flexible and creative in the use of tactics. This allows leaders to adapt to changing circumstances and respond to the actions of the enemy. For example, you might use various formations and tactics in order to surprise the enemy and catch them off guard. Another key point is the value of attacking the enemy's weakest points. By focusing your efforts on their vulnerabilities, you can exploit their weaknesses and increase your chances of victory. For instance, if the enemy has a particularly weak defense in a certain area, you might launch a surprise attack there in order to quickly gain an advantage. Overall, this chapter in The Art of War highlights the importance of carefully considering the specific circumstances of the situation, being flexible and creative in the use of tactics, and attacking the enemy's weakest points in order to succeed in warfare. Energy. The concept of energy, or the effective use of resources in warfare. One key point is the importance of using resources efficiently and avoiding wasting energy on unnecessary efforts. It is advisable to focus on key objectives and prioritize efforts that will have the greatest impact. By being strategic in the use of energy, you can increase your chances of success in warfare. Timing is also a crucial aspect of the use of energy. Paying attention to the right moment to act, as well as the best pace to maintain, can help to maximize the impact of your actions and catch the enemy off guard. For example, you might choose to launch a surprise attack at a time when the enemy is least expecting it in order to catch them off guard. It is also important to be aware of the energy levels of both your own army and the enemy. Maintaining the energy and morale of your own troops and working to undermine that of the enemy can give you a significant advantage in the battlefield. For instance, you might try to demoralize the enemy by spreading false rumors or by attacking their supply lines, while at the same time boosting the confidence and motivation of your own troops. Weak point and strong. The focus is on the concept of weak points and strong points in warfare. Leaders are advised to identify and exploit the weak points of the enemy while defending their own strong points. By focusing their efforts on the enemy's vulnerabilities, they can gain an advantage and increase their chances of success. For example, you might launch a surprise attack on the enemy's weakest defensive point in order to quickly gain an advantage. It is also important to be flexible and adaptable in the identification and exploitation of weak points. This might involve changing your strategy in response to the changing circumstances of the situation. For instance, if the enemy strengthens a particular weak point, you might need to adjust your tactics in order to continue exploiting it. Additionally, leaders should be aware of the relative strength and weakness of their own army as well as that of the enemy. By understanding the balance of power between the two sides, they can make informed decisions about how to proceed. For example, if your own army is significantly weaker than the enemy's, you might choose to adopt guerrilla tactics or focus on defensive strategies in order to compensate for your disadvantage. Maneuvering. The focus is on the concept of maneuvering in warfare. Leaders are advised to pay attention to the specific circumstances of the situation and to be flexible in their maneuvering in order to gain an advantage over the enemy. This might involve adjusting their tactics in response to the actions of the enemy or exploiting the terrain to their advantage. Sun Tzu also emphasizes the importance of deception in maneuvering. By disguising their intentions and creating false appearances, leaders can mislead the enemy and catch them off guard. In addition, leaders have to pay attention to the relative strength and weakness of their own army as well as that of the enemy. By understanding the balance of power between the two sides, leaders can make informed decisions about how to proceed. Variation in tactics. The focus is on the concept of the 9 variables in warfare. These variables include the moral law, heaven, earth, the commander, method and discipline, terrain, leadership, management, and law. When making decisions about how to proceed in warfare, it is important to consider each of these variables and how they might impact the situation. By thoroughly assessing the specific circumstances, you can choose a course of action that maximizes your chances of success. Adaptability and flexibility are also key in the face of changing circumstances. You should be open to adjusting your strategy in response to the actions of the enemy and the other variables at play. For example, if the terrain changes or the enemy shifts their focus to a different area, you might need to alter your tactics in order to respond effectively. Overall, variations in tactics is advice to leaders to consider the 9 variables when making decisions about how to proceed in warfare and to be adaptable and flexible in the face of changing circumstances. The Army on the March. The focus is on the concept of the various types of ground in warfare. Leaders are advised to carefully consider the specific characteristics of the ground they are fighting on, as well as the strengths and weaknesses of their own army, in order to choose a tactical disposition that maximizes their chances of success. For example, if the ground is particularly difficult to navigate, you might choose a formation that is more suited to such conditions in order to maintain an advantage over the enemy. It is also important to adapt your tactics to the specific circumstances of the situation. By being flexible and creative in the use of tactics, you can gain an advantage over the enemy and exploit their vulnerabilities. For instance, you might use surprise attacks or unconventional tactics in order to catch the enemy off guard. Additionally, you should be aware of the potential for unexpected developments on the battlefield. By remaining vigilant and being prepared for the unexpected, you can be better equipped to respond to sudden changes in the situation. For example, if the enemy launches a surprise attack or the terrain unexpectedly shifts, you might need to quickly adjust your tactics in order to respond effectively. Terrain. The focus is on the concept of using spies in warfare. Leaders are advised to use spies to gather information about the enemy's plans and intentions, as well as the strengths and weaknesses of their own army. By gathering intelligence through spies, you can gain a significant advantage over the enemy. For example, you might use spies to gather information about the enemy's strategic plans or to identify their weaknesses that you can then exploit. It is important to be careful and discreet in the use of spies. You should use secret agents who are skilled at gathering information without being detected, and be cautious about revealing your own plans to potential spies. By being stealthy in your use of spies, you can avoid alerting the enemy to your intentions and maintain an element of surprise. You should also be aware of the potential for deception and trickery when using spies. By remaining vigilant and carefully assessing the information gathered through spies, you can avoid being misled or caught off guard. For instance, you might verify the information gathered by spies through other sources or use your own spies to test the reliability of the information. The 9 situations. The focus is on the concept of the role of the weather in warfare. Leaders are advised to pay attention to the weather and consider how it might impact the situation when making decisions about how to proceed in warfare. Taking the weather into account can give you an advantage over the enemy. For example, if the weather is particularly hot and dry, you might choose tactics that exploit this to your advantage, such as using fire to create smoke that obstructs the enemy's vision. Adaptability and flexibility are also key in the face of changing weather conditions. You should be prepared for the unexpected and ready to adjust your tactics in response to changing circumstances. For instance, if a sudden rainstorm makes the ground slippery and difficult to navigate, you might need to adapt your formation or tactics in order to maintain an advantage. The attack by fire. Leaders are advised to be aware of the 9 changes and to consider how they might impact the situation when making decisions about how to proceed in warfare. The 9 changes are: chaos, the state of confusion and disorder that can occur at the beginning of a conflict. Stasis, the state of balance and stability that can occur after the initial chaos has passed. Flux, the state of continuous change and evolution that can occur as the conflict progresses. Retreat, the decision to withdraw from a conflict in order to regroup and strategize. Advance, the decision to move forward and engage the enemy in combat. Obstruction, the use of defensive tactics and strategies to block the enemy's progress. Division, the decision to divide one's forces in order to achieve a tactical advantage. Union, the decision to unite one's forces in order to achieve a strategic advantage. Weariness, the state of exhaustion and depletion that can occur as the conflict continues.
Thank you for watching our summary of The Art of War. We hope you found it informative and that it gave you a better understanding of this classic text. Sun Tzu's insights on strategy, tactics, and leadership are timeless and continue to be relevant today. If you're interested in learning more, we highly recommend reading the full book. Until next time, take care.